Good evening. It's 6 o'clock on October 11th, 2023. I call the meeting of the DeKalb Township Board of Trustees to order. May I get a roll call, please?
Absolutely. Trustee King.
Present.
Trustee Bradlow. Trustee Thurman. Here. Trustee McNutt. Here. Supervisor Huss.
Here.
The President, Highway Commissioner Smith, Assessor Richard Dyer, and
Bill Newkirk.
Bill Newkirk of Newkirk and Associates.
Can you stand for the pledge, please? Nancy, would you like to lead us?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any changes they want to suggest for the agenda? Okay, hearing none, it's all set. Public comment, no one here from the public to make a comment, but presentations.
All right. My name is Bill Newkirk from Newkirk and Associates. I was here and presented the audit last year as well. I'm not going to go page by page through this, but if there are any specific questions, I'll take those at any time if anybody's got anything. One of the main focuses, I just want to explain what you're looking at and what we've got for the audit here. So if we start on pages 1 and 2, this is really what you ultimately pay for. So this is our audit opinion, and the first couple paragraphs up here, it's what it's called a clean or unmodified audit opinion. The state or any creditor or anybody, that's what they're looking for. That means we went through and everything was good and that these financial statements are fairly presented based on our opinion and all the audit procedures that we did. So, you know, this is a lot of language that's more or less the gist of it. Pages 3 and 4 are a very high level balance sheet and income statement where we combine all the funds. I normally don't spend a lot of time on these statements because if we flip to page 5, then we split it out by fund. And this is how you're used to operating and budgeting and things like that. So this is essentially a balance sheet on page 5 by fund. And then page 7 is essentially an income statement by fund. The big number there that I normally point out, the third number up from the bottom, change in fund balance, that essentially is a net income or loss. The big loss there in permanent road, if you look halfway down the page, you've got capital outlay of 643,000. So capital outlay is, you know, a depreciable asset. So that's normally a major piece of equipment, road improvement, infrastructure of some kind. So normally those are planned and budgeted for. That when there's a net loss, a lot of times you'll build up tax revenue for a number of years and then do a big project where you spend down a couple $100,000. So not really out of the ordinary or red flag, but just a number that if you were looking at, I don't want you to think, oh man, we were way in the red or had an issue there. Then we go into the notes to the financial statements. I'm going to hit just a couple of high points in the notes. A lot of it is long and boring and talks about different, you know, assumptions and accounting procedures and things like that of the township. On page 15, we do have a high level income statement. So again, right in the middle of the page, I just alluded to that 643,000 of capital outlay. You'll see infrastructure and additions, that second column there, 643,000. So that correlates to the number I just talked about, that we did put that on a depreciation schedule for infrastructure that will depreciate over time. But on the fund financial statements, it's closer to cash basis where you recognize the entire expenditure in the year that it's incurred. And then at the bottom, we talk about long-term debt. The only long-term debt the village or the township technically has is related to compensated absences and IMRF. So you don't have any traditional like loans or notes payable or anything like that. The next several pages is a gory detail of a lot of information regarding IMRF. These pension disclosures got really big a couple of years ago, that there is a number of things that we have to disclose. And I'm actually going to flip forward a few more pages related to that, all the way to page 22. We have supplementary information. This is specifically related to IMRF. And I just like to point out the bottom line that's double underlined that says net pension liability asset across there. So we're going to build a 10-year schedule. It's built prospectively from 2015. A positive number in that line is a net pension liability, meaning that's how much more the actuaries are calculating it'll take to fund the pensions. And then a negative number is a net pension asset, meaning it's actually overfunded. So if you look, you had an asset in 2017 and then in 20 and 21. And then it went back to a liability this year. One of the big reasons is in that last column, again, about halfway down, a negative 534,000. That's the investment loss. So essentially the stock market went down a decent amount in 2022. And that resulted where they reworked the actuarial calculations and you went from looks like you've got plenty to the stock market tanked and now it looks like there's a liability. So that will fluctuate some based on that. Overall, I like this schedule because it shows a multi-year trend that you can see overall, if the market trends right, the net pension liability is reasonable. IMRF is a very well-funded pension system. It's something that, nationwide is highly acclaimed compared to like the downstate pensions that the state of Illinois manages. So they rework your calculation, which then brings us to the next page. On page 23, that shows how much the township is contributing each year. And that last column is a percentage of payroll. And you'll see that generally that was 8 and 9% a few years ago. And then it's dropped back down to the 6-7. It might go back up to the 8-9 if the stock market kind of lags downward. But you'll see as you built up that asset, then the IMRF actuaries, they calculate that you have to put less in. So again, I'm just kind of showing it's a little bit of a roller coaster with the stock market. They do their best to smooth it and calculate in downturns. But especially after you had several years of good going up, a downturn it's kind of a stark contrast compared to what there's been. But I like these multi-year trends that kind of show you what's going on related to IMRF. But again, no red flags or issues. I know you guys really don't have much control. You just pay what IMRF tells you to pay, but it's nice to kind of understand and see the numbers sometimes. Then following that, starting on page 24, this is more detailed than anywhere else in the report. So by fund, we have budget versus actual schedules for every fund. Again, I kind of highlighted that big capital outlay up front. There's nothing really out of the ordinary. But again, I like to just explain to you where to find something. So from there to the end of the report, the last 8 or 10 pages there are all these detailed schedules that have, line item detail with budget and actual activity for each fund for the year. So really, if you were looking for something nitty gritty, the back of the report, these last 8 pages or so is where I would direct you to. Again, nothing specific to highlight, but I like to tell you where to find something or, what you're looking at here. The last thing, so everything that's bound in there is what gets submitted to the state. We also have this other packet in the back that there's certain required communication that we have with the board. So professional standards require we put certain things in writing. Page 1 just kind of explains the purpose of this packet. And then on page 2, we get into a lot of these things that we have to cover. So for example, in the middle of page 2, you'll see a paragraph that says difficulties encountered performing the audit. We didn't encounter any difficulties. I'm really glad to present that, but we have to put that in writing to you so that if we did present something, it's a really professional outlet that we can bring that up and have a conversation about it. The very next paragraph is one I want to talk about for just a minute. So corrected and uncorrected misstatements. So basically, if we change your books and records at all, we're required to disclose that to you. So starting on page 4, we have several pages of journal entries. And the biggest adjustments that we make are related to the fact that you guys essentially track accounting on a cash basis throughout the year, but then you report on a GAAP basis. The biggest difference is receivables and payables. So on a cash basis, you recognize revenue when it gets deposited into the bank and an expense when you cut the check out. Where on a GAAP basis, we recognize revenue when it's earned or you're entitled to it essentially. So as soon as you levy property taxes, they go into effect January 1, that becomes a receivable on your books, even though you don't see a penny of that cash until like May or June. So we make a big adjustment related to that. And then same thing, expenses, like if you did a big project in April and you don't pay that bill till May, you incurred that expense. At April 30th, you owed that vendor. If you went out of business or merged into another township or whatever on April 30th, like you would be liable to pay that. So we pick up that liability and recognize that expenditure here. And that goes for payroll too. Like, payroll, if the pay period was from April 24th to May 7th, we would pick up half that paycheck is really April that you owe those employees. So we do a bunch of journal entries. Number one, we have to establish opening fund balance and reverse all of last year's accruals that have been paid, and then book all the current year accruals related to it. So that's the vast majority. If you look at most of these, you'll see a lot related to payroll, where we're moving around and getting things in the right line item and getting things accrued properly. But it is quite a few entries that we make, and we're required to put that in writing and let you know all of the adjustments that we make. The last thing on page 9, we talk about internal control of the township, and I have the same 2 findings on page 10 that we talked about last year. So the first one, segregation of duties. The idea behind segregation of duties is that any financial transaction should have ideally 3 people involved, at least 2, with day-to-day checks and balances. But the nature of townships where the supervisor is also the treasurer, and you have 1 bookkeeper doing most of the stuff for the highway department. There's just too much that one person's doing without thorough oversight and review. The big thing that I always emphasize on this is the trustees' responsibility at these meetings to ask questions and scrutinize things, be aware of the risk that's associated with the fact that day to day you don't have an accounting department with built-in checks and balances every day, that you're relying on these individuals to be trustworthy and do this. So I think it brings a little bit more responsibility to the trustees. The second one, preparation of financial statements. Essentially what this says is you're relying on us to calculate your depreciation schedule, to make all those accrual adjustments that I just talked about. And nobody audits us per se. You're relying on us to do that, and then there's not a double check behind us. In a perfect world, you would have the books and records adjusted, and we'd have no or very, very few adjusting journal entries, and we would audit that work. Again, there's an inherent risk. I'll be the first to say, I know I'm not perfect, right? Like we could make a mistake too, and there's nobody double checking that we didn't make a mistake on these accruals. So with that, we cannot be part of the township's internal control as the auditor by definition. You should have internal controls before we ever show up. So we're required to disclose that as a material weakness, that you're relying on us to do that. Again, like I'm not saying this needs action, but I'm saying like it's important to be aware of the risk that's associated with that. Are there any questions? The last one, we did have a comment. We always look at credit cards and note if there's sales tax charged or missing receipts on those. So that's the last comment on the very last page. That's less minor. That we don't do a scope test, meaning I don't care if it's $2 or $2,000. Like we just look at 1 or 2 months activity and it's a compliance test. It's pass fail. Either you have the receipt or you don't, right? And we just disclose the findings if there's not adequate support for those. So.
And in that, it says, we noted the township does not have a formal credit card policy, but I thought Andrea was gonna remove that because we do.
Okay, I will make sure that gets.
Recommendation letter.
Yeah, well, I think we both do, but I don't know, did we pass them prior to this?
Yes.
Was it this?
Okay, I'll get together with Andrew and make sure that our records get updated for that next year. I apologize that.
No, that's fine.
It was.
And in regard to your comment about segregation of duties, just to get your feedback. So since I did take over, the bill paying and all that. I have been every month sending the bank statements to the trustees with the board packet so that they can look and.
Excellent.
And then also in our board packet every month, and I think this has been going on for years, are the reconciliations that are done.
Perfect.
By Jody and I. So like all the numbers are there.
Yep.
Do you have any other recommendations?
No, but I think those are great mitigating controls. Again, in an ideal world, you would have daily checks and balances in place. A lot can happen in a month, right? I guess is what my reaction and why we have the comment we do. Now, again, it's not practical from a budgetary standpoint. I get that, to have an accounting department of 2 or 3 people that have those daily checks and balances in place. But I think those are great mitigating controls on a monthly basis to give the trustees the tools to make sure that they are that mitigating control that I talked about on a month-to-month basis.
Is that, I hope I'm not interrupting, Mary, but is that mostly what you're finding with every township?
Correct.
And that's
Yep.
kind of standard.
Correct. Yep. The only entities that don't have that comment that I audit, so I only do governments, and all of my townships and little villages and stuff like that have that. Bigger school districts that normally have at least 2 or often 3 people in an accounting department, then with a superintendent, you can involve 3 people in things and have a day-to-day check and balance. But right, in an entity this small, I realize that it's budgetarily prohibitive to have an accounting department of that scale. So it is somewhat a boilerplate question that I'm fairly confident that every single township I audit has that comment, that it is somewhat standard. But, and again, I'm not recommending or saying that, you know, I think change needs to happen, but I think it's really important for you guys as a board to understand the risk that's associated with it. And then take the mitigating controls of what's being sent to you monthly, you know, more seriously than somewhere that has a 3 or 4 person accounting department that has those things day to day.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So what if something happened to Mary and she was not able to manage? Would the township just be, because it's only one person, we just, what happens then?
Well, I think that would be up to you guys as trustee. I mean, if she wasn't able to execute the duty of supervisor, I think one of you would probably become supervisor pro tem of some type.
Trustee to my knowledge.
Okay, and that's more of a lawyer question. I don't know legally who becomes supervisor pro temp. But in that case, that person then would be expected to fulfill those duties. And if they couldn't, you know, contract those out with another accounting firm or outside bookkeeper or whatever to at least get payroll done and the basic bills paid and things like that in the event that Mary wasn't able to execute those duties.
And I'm not hoping that or thinking that. I'm just thinking. What I'm thinking is, because
That's a fair question.
yeah, my thinking is, when you mentioned, you know, at least 3 people and, you know, a mild accounting office, is that in some ways it's a disadvantage for us to have one person.
Absolutely.
And that's not a new thought for me.
Okay.
And it's not at all personal. It's just a disadvantage. And so I just wondered,
Yeah.
where we sit in the event that there is a problem.
Well, go ahead, Mary.
So there is a backup, like in case of emergency. Kim from Swanson Quality Services, who like is our QuickBooks consultant, would be able to execute on that, you know, for a short-term fix if something were to happen to me.
Without a vote or anything.
Oh,
we
no,
would
no, I
have
think
to
you guys would have
say-
to do something,
you would
but
have to.
she would be a person that would be able to pick up the ball and run with it.
Like do QuickBooks and the payroll, that
Okay.
part of it.
And does she follow along every month with you?
I have pretty regular meetings with her, as well as Jody
Mhm.
does too, if, you know.
Okay. And my second question was, when you mentioned that, you know, there's nobody watching the watcher,
Yeah.
what are some options for that?
So, I mean, again, in a perfect world, if you had, you know, a more robust accounting department or things, ideally, you guys would make a lot of these entries before we show up or identify those payables and receivables and things like that, where then we could audit the work that Mary or an inside bookkeeper that works for the township is doing. You know, again, I audit a lot of entities. I'll compare you guys most to Sycamore Township right up the road. They're in the same boat, have these same 2 comments. We do things the same way. Larger, more sophisticated entities sometimes have like a CPA level person or a really knowledgeable bookkeeper that makes a lot of those adjustments before we show up, in which case then we would mitigate, it gets rid of that comment and we truly audit, you know, adjusted books and records rather than us being the one to adjust them to that accrual basis. again, comparing you to Sycamore, I'm not saying a change needs to be made, but again, it's just being aware of the risk associated with it. But if you wanted to mitigate that comment, it would take somebody on staff doing most of the journal entries that are on those 4 pages or so right before that. Before we show up, you identifying the accounts payable, the accrued payroll, getting things split out for reporting. So that then we could audit those adjusted books.
Almost hiring a monthly accountant or something of that nature.
Yeah,
Right.
Is there any way to automate the process?
Not that I know of, maybe with a really sophisticated ERP system, but I mean, QuickBooks. It's good and bad. Like, it's good because it's pretty user friendly and it works with almost any business. It's bad in the sense that there's not a lot of like automation or customization to it, right? It's got to fit everything. So it's not really good at any particular thing. It would take, with QuickBooks, I don't believe there's a way to really automate it, is the short answer.
One other question.
Yeah.
For the segregation of duties, just as another layer of accountability, wouldn't issuing 1099s, I mean, that validates that who payments are made to, that we're reporting it to the IRS. Payments over, what is it, $6.99 or whatever?
$600, yeah. I mean, in my mind, that doesn't help with the segregation of duties issue that much, but I mean, it's the law and it's definitely best practice to be issuing 1099s to any subcontractors that you'd be required to.
Okay.
I have a question on
Yeah.
page 4 of this additional packet. The second item, the first one says pre-fund insurance, and then the second one says due to other funds. What is due to other funds?
So, and that one, looking across, I think that line's actually blank. I'm not sure. Due to other funds is if one fund owed another. So I believe there was one generated that we disclosed in the report that an expenditure gets paid out of road and bridge, and some or all of that is really cemetery, and it's going to get reimbursed by the town fund because it's a cemetery expense. That's like a temporary loan that the expenditure went through road and bridge. So now the town fund owes road and bridge for the cemetery portion of that bill. So I'm sorry?
Payroll, it's for payroll.
Okay, so that's an example of where you have a due to, due from between funds. It's basically a short-term loan when an expenditure gets paid out of one fund and is going to get reimbursed by another.
Last question, could we be doing anything different to improve our processes or?
I think one of the big things that came up during the audit was the way that payroll gets reported through QuickBooks. And I don't know if Andrea talked to you, if there was a way that, again, I helped you set up some QuickBooks, and I think you're using QuickBooks a lot better this fiscal year than last. And I guess the goal would be to keep building on that each year. And I would target the next area would be getting payroll to, allocate out. So I believe that right now, or at least during this audit period, essentially when you ran payroll, all the payroll through at least the town QuickBooks file was getting dumped into a single line item, payroll expenses. There are tools in QuickBooks where you could have assessor salary, supervisor or elected official salaries, like those things split out onto different line items when payroll processes, rather than going into a single line item that then we have to desegregate as part of the audit. I would say that's probably the number one thing that comes to mind, that, if you wanted to keep building QuickBooks to do better reporting, make our life easier on the audit, and probably give you better numbers for budgeting and things like that, I would target the way that payroll is set up to keep trying to customize and make that as practical as possible to get those things split out and make better use of QuickBooks.
So I work at a university. So what grade would you give it?
I would say that this is probably a B. I think we work with some audits that are a little bit cleaner and smoother, but overall, it meets our expectations and is a fine, the way that the accounting is done is it works, and I'm not saying it's perfect, but I think that it's definitely passable.
Any other questions?
I just have a question, yeah, it said on this page 2,
Yep.
it says we have requested certain representation from management that are included in the management representation letter dated October 9.
That's this letter that was sent to Mary and Craig and signed off. Mary could share a copy. Essentially, all that's saying, and this is not private or anything, you can read through a copy of this letter. There's certain representations, meaning that more or less, they're saying that all the information they gave us was true, accurate, and complete as part of the audit, that they've reviewed certain things in the audit and signed off and approved them. Yep, that's what this is related to, is this letter that Craig's got to sign and get back to me, but that's what that's alluding to.
We might wanna have this information, maybe before they come, is that possible? Cause he went through it quick, I mean, I'm no expert. So for me to ask questions, I would probably have to know a little bit more about what you're talking about. I mean, I thought you did a good job, certainly were articulate and clear. And certainly did well with the page numbers. But there may be questions that I would have that I don't even know to ask. Right, things that I could see that I don't know.
And I'm still assuming if we look at this now, and we have some issues, we can still raise those.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, you can always email me or contact my office with any questions or concerns that you guys have. We do try to get an audit draft out to Mary. That was probably what, last Thursday or Friday at least.
Yes.
So we do try to get it ahead of time, a draft to be reviewed prior to the meeting.
Yeah, and I included it in the board packet, but
Okay.
I maybe should have emailed it out to all of you immediately.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily have any questions, but I just don't think that I'm able to really ask questions, you know, in this moment about stuff that I maybe would if I had looked a little closer or at some other point. But I like this. I mean, I like the way he went through it and explained it all. So.
Yeah, and like I said, if you look through stuff and have a question, all the contact information for my office is right on this front cover. Never hesitate to give me a call, or our website's right at the bottom. You can find either Andrew or my email on the website and send us an email.
This is a question just related. So you all are CPAs or?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I work with students, and so
Okay,
they're looking for a job option. I'm like, hey, they do this job.
there you go.
Yeah.
So this will now be sent to the comptroller.
Once I have Craig's signature.
Okay.
Yep. We will upload it to comptroller as soon as I get Craig's signature. And then you'll file with the county and everything's good. Here's this.
So why is there the AFR draft or AFR? What you submit to the comptroller has to be in a different format than this?
Correct. So the comptroller has their own form that you log in and you fill with their line items and information, that it's more standardized so that, you know, every township property tax goes on line 101 and replacement tax goes on line 102 and stuff like that. Whereas like this report is kind of an internally created formatting. I mean, we don't have a set chart of accounts or anything like that every township uses. So the comptroller's report kind of standardizes all of them to accumulate that information for the state.
Okay.
So, and there's a few areas where I would say the state has a little bit more detail, but in general, I would say that it's much more dialed down. Like a lot of things get lumped into just a couple line items to keep it very broad and general so that every township fits in. And they don't have 600 expense lines or something, you know, like most of yours is just going to be considered like a general government for like all the general assistance and town stuff. And then there's like a streets and highways line that pretty much all the stuff for the road fund goes in, rather than splitting out between like repairs and maintenance and salaries and things like that. Like you won't see a line anywhere on there that really has salaries. They do ask for total salaries paid for the entire township, that's a number that gets on there, but it doesn't get split out by fund or anything like that. So in general, I would say that that report has less detail because they're trying to fit every single township in the state into one format.
So that's not a second check?
It's not, because no one really reviews or a report. I mean, it's filed publicly. That anybody can go look at it, but from an internal control standpoint, there's not a control there that I would rely on. I don't mean to belittle myself, but I don't think many people are going and looking at my report online.
No, and I think only, you have to, and I don't know what the number is anymore, but, I mean, not every township has to submit an audit every year.
Correct. If you're under 850,000 in revenue, you only have to do one every 4 years. Or, well, the way township code reads, it's when the supervisor changes or is reelected. So basically on election years, pretty much all of them have to be audited. And then if you had a supervisor change midterm, you might have to have one between there. Yeah, that if you're under 850, you guys are well over 850, so you have to have one every year. That's state statute.
If I quit spending.
I have a question.
Yeah,
On page 14, it says deposits and custodial risk.
correct.
And it talks about custodial, well, you probably know what it says.
Correct.
So if a bank went under,
Correct.
would we lose?
You would not. So the last line in there, it should
It
say,
does, insured or collateralized.
correct. So everything is covered by either FDIC insurance that would be insured, or collateralized means that when you have deposits in excess of FDIC insurance, you have an agreement with the bank that they're going to collateralize. So all the banks have, they buy US Treasury notes and other high quality bonds and stuff as assets to back all of the deposits of the bank. Well, not all of the deposits, that's why they can fail, but a lot of the deposits. Well, if you're a governmental entity, you have an agreement with them that certain assets are going to be pledged directly to DeKalb Township. So in the event that a bank fails, you'll get FDIC insurance like everybody at the bank does. But then when they go to divvy up the remaining assets, those are specifically pledged to DeKalb Township, that your deposits would be made whole by those like bonds that are pledged directly to the township. So that's when we talk about collateralized. They've collateralized your deposits and they give you a statement every month or every quarter that it'll say US Treasury note, it'll have a QSIP on there and what the market value is, that they're telling you, these are the assets we've specifically pledged to DeKalb Township. So in the event of bank failure, you don't have a loss.
Okay.
And that's something that we actually audit somewhat heavily, because again, that's one of those things that on a day-to-day basis, most people don't understand and aren't looking at. So when every governmental entity I audit, that's something that we go and we actually confirm directly with the bank. So we send a letter to the bank and have them send us a statement of all the collateral that they're holding for the township to ensure that there is adequate collateral so that we can put that note in there.
Good. Okay.
Anything else?
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you guys. Have a wonderful evening.
You too.
Okay.
Pretty thorough. I'm glad nobody does my technical like this.
Don't really have a choice.
Yeah, I have a lot of notes at the end of my technical. So you need to.
Okay, moving on to reports, supervisors report. Just want to bring you up to date on things that have occurred since the last meeting in September. On September 20th, Casey and I did a presentation to Safe Passage staff to explain to them how we can be a resource to Safe Passage residents. We had the last farmers market. We participated in the Triad Senior Safety and Prevention Fair, and it was at the new senior center. Deanna Cada from the DeKalb County Mental Health Board came and did a presentation to our GA clients. Every month we require them to participate in some sort of a learning, some sort of a presentation to learn about resources in the community. We're up to 21 GA clients, so I think she touched on some things about mental health that they weren't aware of resources in the community, and even the mental health board is a resource. Greg and I were both at Sue Resum's community meeting.
It was interesting.
That we had an opportunity to talk with her briefly, and she invited us to do set up a Zoom meeting with her so we can tell her more about what specifically this township does, because I'm sure it's every township in her district is different. On the 27th, the case managers attended the LIHEAP training. So LIHEAP opened up on October 3rd. So individuals that we're working with through our GA and EA programs will assist them with the LIHEAP applications as a way to have cost savings when they're living on a shoestring budget. On the 28th, Kim and I attended the Metro Township Association Symposium, where I attended a session on township financing, and Kim attended a session on social media, and then obviously lots of networking opportunities. And then just yesterday, there was the third or fourth meeting of the discussion on healthcare in DeKalb County that resulted from a local family leaving money to the DeKalb County Community Foundation for the purpose of housing and healthcare. So the money that was intended for housing has been distributed to Habitat for Humanity for DeKalb Township residents who need minor home repairs. A portion of those funds, let's say a repair is $500, $250 will be paid for out of these designated funds that came from the family, and $250 will be the responsibility of the homeowner. So it just helps with getting some minor repairs done by trustworthy sources. And it cuts down those expenditures. People do have to qualify for that financially. So you'll see on hopefully our website and social media pages, now that money's been distributed, we can start advertising it more and maybe helping individuals in the community. But we're still having a discussion about the gaps in service and healthcare, and the conversation for 3 times now has come back to the abuse, overuse of calling 911 for non-emergencies. So trying to problem solve how we address some of those issues in the community, and there's multiple partners there who are contributing to that conversation. So hopefully there'll be a resolution and decrease those 911 calls for non-emergencies. As a result of attending the township financing session at the symposium, I came back and I contacted Resource Bank. One of the suggestions for township financing was ask your bank if they can do better on the interest rate. So I asked and they said yes. So we were at 0.25%, and now we have jumped up to 1.4%. So it's going to provide more interest on our accounts. And there is an option to move money into a money market that could pay 2.25% on balances over $1 million. So, while we have this period where we're getting the property tax dollars, our bank accounts do tend to go up. And so it would be a possibility to move some of the dollars into the money market. It's just a way to make, more money and
Ask for less.
Mm-hmm. So I want to explore this a little bit more and look at our numbers and see how long we'd be able to keep that in there. And then also I want to have a conversation with Bill about it, because I don't know if it can come from multiple accounts to make that million, or if, combining the money is not,
Could be a nightmare.
yeah, it could be an accounting nightmare, so, so that happened, and then the last thing that I want to report on is every year on October 1st, the state changes or generally increases TANF amounts. So TANF is temporary assistance for needy families. It's the cash assistance program that's offered through the state. And we have to comply with whatever their increases are. We have to reflect that in our general assistance. And so our general assistance on October 1st changed from $340 a month and increased to $425. So like I said, we have 21 individuals who are currently receiving. So in a couple meetings ago, we talked about having to watch the numbers for general assistance and emergency assistance closely, because those are going up. And so now with this $85 increase, per person a month, I may have to come back with a amended budget, and just so that we're in a position that we don't run out of funds in that line item. That's all I have. Any questions on any of that?
Did you mention a new senior center?
The senior center moved from 4th Street to the church, the elder care, or not elder care, family service agency, Club 55.
Okay, that sounds new to me. So,
We talked about it in the last board meeting, or in a
Okay.
previous board meeting.
well, we
so-
may have, I think I got some long COVID memory stuff, don't we? Thanks, Bill, thank
So
you.
it's still new.
You won't remember our laugh.
Yeah,
6 months.
the other question was, you mentioned some stuff that has to go on the webpage. Do we have somebody that does that, or do
It
you?
happens in-house, yeah.
Okay,
We're all dangerously equipped to do things. We do have a contract with OC ImageWorks. If there's higher level stuff that we can't do, then that's part of the contract, is that they'll handle that for us.
okay,
I look at a lot. I think it's, for the most part, I think everything's very well done. I mean,
yeah, no complaints, I just know she said something about, we'll have to advertise and change the webpage, based on some information.
I'd like to add the home repair services to our
That's what it
webpage.
was, yeah, and so I was thinking, oh, wow, do we have to get somebody to do that, and does that happen? And the other question was, you mentioned about the meeting with is she a Congress lady or
State Senator.
state senator? And,
14 years, she's been some.
oh, so were there any highlights from that meeting?
One big low light, in my opinion, but,
Oh.
I'm sorry, Mary, I'm cutting in on yours, but, I thought she was very receptive. I thought she was very positive towards townships, which is not always the case in Springfield. So I had talked to her in the past, very briefly. I know from her territory, Mary's, where Mary grew up, basically, and that more of that rural area with it, I think can be a plus, and she's based in Morris. So
Yeah.
there's a little finger comes right up into grab NIU and that and DeKalb as the redistricting, and she's part of that. So yeah, I thought.
Yeah, she touched on a variety of subjects. I mean, took questions from the audience. And
Nothing stood out.
nothing that you don't, hear about in the news already.
Oh,
No inside information.
wow, necessarily pay attention to all the news, and obviously my memory doesn't hold on to what I do here, so. I thought, being up close and personal, maybe you heard something.
I mean, things that have an impact on other parts of her community, like that. Electric vehicle battery plant that's being proposed and nuclear power. Pensions.
She sits on the school, education committee for the Senate, which I think is a big plus, I think.
She was visiting NIU that day, right?
Yeah, she was busy. She was kind of bouncing around. And she has an office right down
I
here.
saw the office,
So
yeah.
basically the little restaurant right across the
Yeah.
street. Is where it was. Would you say there was 25 people there? 20? Yeah. So, no, I thought it was a good turnout. I thought. She was, and anyone that's receptive to sit down and talk with us later, I'm a fan of, because
Okay.
it's not always the case.
Sure.
Any other questions? Clerk's report,
No report.
highway commissioners report.
Yeah, we're just trying to finish up, trying to beat the farmers from getting started, finishing up some road work out on Nelson and do some major improvements. Cemetery, we do need to discuss IGA with the cemetery, whether the road district next year, because I need to, trying to find people is a very difficult task, so. I think that IGA expense, so all I'm asking for is if we're intending on moving forward next year. So I can get something started with that, because I think part of that language is that I have someone. Or at least the availability to say I can do it and have someone hired or. Supposedly hired by January 1st.
Is it for the mall area?
Yeah, so. Yeah, without that, I'm just too obligated, without having extra help, I'm too obligated to what we're trying to do with just three of us, so. Probably too obligated to do with what I have with the three of us, but, yeah, so I'm just asking about that, and it was just notes, I have not been in the building much at all, coming and going a lot, so, yeah, I was just trying to keep up on emails before the meeting. We are expanding our leaf pickup program this year, doing more of the Rich and Coltonville area. That's, the people on the north side and east of First Street. They don't live in the city limits, so they, DeKalb or Sycamore, so they don't get leaf pickup, and had a lot of residents, ask about that, so. We do it on Greenwood Acres and our portion of Greenwood Acres, Kishwaukee and Manor, and then of course the cemeteries. But so kind of expanding that, I don't feel it's fair, that you live in a certain place, farmers don't care, they just blow it out in the field or their farm fields and out in the rural areas, but these kind of residents that really don't have anywhere to get rid of that kind of stuff, so it's about it, and I watched a webinar through TOI on basically the same thing Mary was discussing with the trying to get interest on funds. It was very interesting on different ways of doing it, the legalities through the state of Illinois. I was set up through TOI, if I did not say that. I have been really monitoring the Illinois funds thing. They were at the fall conference last year. That's coming up, so keep that in mind as well. And that is a very good interest rate. And I know from talking to them a year ago, that's very easy to get your money in and out of. I have a fund, my special bridge fund, that is not levied into. And there's, we don't use a lot of that money every year because I can use that for a bridge that, so like the First Street Bridge in DeKalb, that is not ours, but that's $1.5 million project. So even a box culvert, anything to do with running water, I can use out of that fund. It was stopped being levied into back in the 80s. So with that being said, there's like $350 some thousand in there. We maybe spend more or less on a good year, 20 to 30. So that is a board vote. And that's maybe I'm gonna shift a ton of that money that way. 'Cause last time I looked was paying like 5%. So It does pay very good, and it's because it's balled in with the state of Illinois. And you can look on there and you actually, it's on the TOI website. Like there is just all kinds of townships and villages. And you're each individual fund, but it's all balled together. So they have like millions of dollars that they're, then that's how they're getting such good interest rate right now, so. So I've been kind of wanting to do that. That's probably after the first of the year. The only other thing I'm gonna bring up is that I will be bringing my levy to the meeting at the November meeting, hopefully. So that, you can be prepared for that. It won't be a very large increase at all, actually, so. And I think that's it.
Any questions? No. Assessors report?
Assessment notices went out last week, October 6th. The deadline to file any protests on your assessment with the DeKalb County Board is November 6th. 30 days plus a couple of days because of holidays. And we've been busy, obviously, with taxpayers that have been calling and seeing what the difference was. Our equalization factor this year was 9.52% that went across the board to every property. And that's mainly just due to the increase in the housing market. And that's all I got.
So people who are spewing that our taxes are gonna go up by 9%.
They're incorrect.
Yeah.
Just because assessments go up does not mean taxes go up equivalently, because everyone went up by the same percentage, that 9.5%. So basically that doesn't make a whole lot of difference at all, if any.
Does a 9.53% increase apply to commercial?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Commercial, industrial, the only thing it would not apply to would be farm and farm building. And railroad, state of state.
Questions? Right, trustees report, trustee Thurman,
No report.
trustee McNabb,
No report.
trustee Bradlow. Trustee King.
Of course. Homecoming is this weekend, so be prepared to see loads of people. Well, we hope loads, many more than you've seen. I thought Chad would speak to that, but you're not excited about it, huh?
I never get excited.
I didn't think so. No, we're hoping, we've been talking, I know, particularly to the freshmen about it's homecoming, things happen, be careful, be safe, all that kind of stuff. So I guess that's just a piece of it. Deanna did share with us at the, what is it, Mental Health Advisory Board, that they met, that she met with some people. With you, yeah, and that she thought it was nice. She thought it was a good turnout, and she thought that it was a engaging experience on both sides. You would say that too?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, she said it was a great way to be able to hear back from consumers.
Yeah, so everybody was happy. I got a call about shredding, but not from us. I got a call about shredding from, it was a gentleman. But am I the only person that got the call about shredding? Nobody? You don't have landlines, do you? I had a landline from when my father was alive. And I keep it now because his sister is the same, but nonetheless, you know how they get one number and that's like the only number that they.
I don't have a landline.
You said you don't? No. Oh, okay. So I was wondering, one, if we do a call about shredding, and two, who this guy was. I don't remember his name. I just thought, oh, wow, this is interesting. And I worked with a lady who said, oh, wow, you do shredding? And I thought, is that really like a big thing? Like people get into it, but I guess people do. Do we do a call about our shredding event?
A call?
A call.
Like a roll call.
No.
very expensive.
And I don't know how effective it would be, like you say, Craig, most people don't have landlines right now, and to robocall a cell phone is probably cost us more in penalties and fees and doing that,
Yeah.
and so many things about.
We put it in the paper, we put it in the midweek, we put it on the radio, we put it on social
Online.
media, we have.
I'm not
flyers.
suggesting that we don't reach out to people. I was just curious.
If we
And
put it
I
on,
didn't call in the message. I just wondered,
Oh, you received a robocall.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, I thought you received a call from someone inquiring about the shredder. Okay.
no, somebody asked me about shredding and was all excited, and I
Oh.
thought, like, I didn't know
Yeah.
what people.
Yeah, we put it on TikTok, that'll hit 95% of the population.
Yeah, but the people that,
I'm the 5%.
well, I know young people TikTok, but I don't know about adults, so. That was it, Craig, can you repeat what you said about the leaf pickup thing?
So we're expanding on it, so we're
Okay.
doing more areas than we have in the past.
Okay,
Is basically.
What does that do as far as like that line, does that increase the cost for it significantly or?
Not really, so we're fortunate in this area, and most all the city of DeKalb, the city of Sycamore, Cortland, myself. I think I'm the only township that I'm even aware of, other than maybe in the suburbs, that does leaf pickup. But it benefits two ways, it benefits the general public, it also benefits us. Because it does not plug our storm sewers, you know. Because eventually that's where they're going, you know, so by picking them up, I have got more compliments over the years since I've started leaf pickup. Than paving a new road. I mean, literally, the people love that, so it's not. They charge me $35 a load to dump my truck on a farm field, and a local farmer. Then spreads it over his field and plows it for
So like you should
fertilizer.
be paying us.
If you can work that deal out, I would be more than happy to give you his number, but and he is very good to us about it. Being we're so small, and he is not in the township, but. If I went to the landfill with the same load, it would be about $400.
ew,
That, by the way, got federal and state subsidies for that grinder to do that, but that's waste management. I will share that little bit today.
thank you very much, it's nice to hear that, I don't know what we can do, but it's always nice to know. These two forms, are we gonna talk about, okay, all right, thanks, thank you.
Age thing and patience.
Oh, okay, well, I just saw them and I thought, I hope I didn't miss something.
Well, we won't necessarily, each of you had an envelope from the city of DeKalb.
Yeah,
That's a notice that they're putting out that they're annexing and they're required to send that to,
Every elected official here.
and so that's what that is.
okay, are we going, is anybody going, do we need to go, or it's a done deal, so it doesn't?
So basically, the only thing that would affect us there is the roadway, and the roadway is already under the jurisdiction of the city of DeKalb because the bank across the street is already annexed by the city of DeKalb.
Thank you very much, sir.
And then behind it is the DeKalb Country Club. So
Oh, okay.
they probably want to do some improvements to the building, and it's easier to go through the city of DeKalb than it is the county for them.
Well, I can pull that up. Do we, well, I guess the township doesn't do anything for homecoming. Okay, cause supposedly the city is doing a bunch of stuff, so. I just thought, well, I just thought I would ask, I would inquire. And the questions about the, no. Right here.
The audit?
The audit, I couldn't think of that word. Don't start making judgments about me. I just couldn't think of that word. I just am concerned about what if something happens, right? Because before, when there was like an office person, I think Jody, right? And then the supervisor, there was another set of eyes. And so I know that Jody has retired, right? And so she does it, but do you think maybe we should consider getting somebody else? And I know you mentioned Kim.
Kim, the QuickBooks, our QuickBooks consultant, could be a backup is the way I described it.
Okay,
Yeah, I guess my biggest takeaway from that is that the process that we have here is not so unusual for the size of the township. And you know, for me personally, you don't want to be that outlier and stand out doing something that's you know, not quite up to stuff, but it seems like that's a standard practice according to Newburgh.
Well, it's not only, I think it's more, I mean, we're doing exactly what the state law requires the townships to do, you know, and Mary is within her rights to do all the bookkeeping. Which is, you know, like he brought up Sycamore, and Sycamore's levy is actually larger than ours.
Right.
So, and, she does it, her name escapes me, Matthew is the last name right now, but, she does it 99.9% of the townships. Our size and smaller in the state of Illinois do it exactly the way.
okay, well,
You know, I mean, that's just, and it is realistically your job under the law to audit her. Or me, you know, with my, as well.
right,
There's only one person that is bonded in this building that can sign a check. And that's Mary, and that's the supervisor, and that's just the way the law reads, so it's
Right.
very difficult to. You know, she can still sign and write a check at will, you know, if not suggesting that, but so. It would be very hard to make that change, in my opinion.
And that's, I mean. By you guys signing this every month,
We acknowledging that we reviewed it and
Right,
that we're okay with what's inside of it.
Because at one time you were not trustees, you were auditors.
Oh, yeah.
Under the eyes of the state of Illinois, that's what your title was, I should say.
hey, I'm just kind of signing that I understand. But, and I do have a question, but I'll wait till we get there for that.
all right, moving on to bill paying. Can I get a motion to approve the September audit report in the amount of $125,210.64 and the October bills to pay in the amount of $202,144.30.
So move.
Bradlow, second. Discussion?
I have a question. I'm looking for it. I think where our names are, I wrote some notes. It's all zeros. Is that, I don't think that's usual. Or that's
The way it's been, so. If you go to page 46.
okay.
Are you on page? Okay, 46. So you see QuickBooks payroll service, $18,908.66.
Yes, I see
Okay.
that.
That is the payroll for everyone that's below that. And so what Bill was suggesting in the recommendation for how we can do better is that instead of having that as a lump sum, that each individual. And so that's something I have to work through with the QuickBooks person to make that happen.
I thought I had seen it before.
And realistically on your budget, because your QuickBooks should mirror your budget,
So you'd have to have a line item for each individual.
That's the way it was back when Jody was doing
Yeah,
it.
but before.
There was
we-
prior to QuickBooks, yeah.
QuickBooks.
Okay,
So that's where you remember seeing it from, yeah.
That was a while ago.
okay. Okay, it stood out as odd to me, so. And that's ironically, that's the page that I wrote my note on.
Well, how about
Page
that?
46, how about that?
Try colored sticky notes.
You know, I hate those post-it note things, hate them. But, all right,
Any other items of discussion?
I have a quick note, because I usually do the math on this before I come here, and I got for the October bills to pay, and I checked it again, $202,174.30, and I thought you said $144.30.
That's what I got.
Okay.
Well, let's do that math right now because we need to have it correct in the minutes.
Right.
point of clarity, we're on September, right? So we haven't gotten to October yet, have we?
Well, we're approving September and October.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. My bad.
You have to keep off here.
Wait, tell me.
No.
You are correct. It's 202,000. So let me, let's correct. I don't know if I have to,
A statement,
what's that?
your statement.
Right, but we'd already had a motion, so I don't know if I need to make a new motion.
Or
It hasn't been
amend-
voted on.
You can amend it.
I mean, it's okay, we discussed it right now, I don't think it's the issue. And the part of the changes is part of the discussion,
Okay,
so I don't think you have to change anything.
so you'll reflect, you'll put your correct number in there.
Yep.
So it's $202,174.30. Thank you for, it's a good system.
On the math, yeah,
We got checks and balances.
Yeah.
yeah, well,
Just when we thought he was just a pretty face.
right, because his name wasn't mentioned as the backup money guy, so maybe we need to consider that.
Any other items of discussion? Roll call, please.
Trustee King,
Yes, with the additions, or should I say aye? That's my favorite.
there you go.
Yes, aye.
Trustee McNutt.
Yes.
Trustee Bradlaugh. Trustee Thurman. Supervisor. Hess.
Yes.
5 ayes and 0 nays, the motion passes.
And then can I get a motion to receive, file, and approve the treasurer's September budget report?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Right, trustee Bradlaugh. Trustee Thurman.
Yes.
Trustee King.
Aye.
Trustee McNutt.
Yes.
Supervisor Hess.
Yes.
5 ayes and 0 nays, the motion passes.
Nothing for unfinished business. New business, we have obviously the presentation on the audit, and so for the purpose of everyone being in agreement with what was presented to us, we typically approve that. So can I get a motion to approve the fiscal year 23 audit?
You know, in light of what trustee King said earlier, that she wanted time to review it, should we the approval to next board meeting, would that be appropriate?
Oh, we can, that's why I was gonna bring it up for discussion.
I'm okay if we don't. I didn't say it because in this moment, I thought that we should. I just think moving forward, that might want to be a practice that we consider. He was here, he was pretty clear about where everything stood. I don't know if anybody else feels uncomfortable. If you all feel uncomfortable, I can support that. But on my behalf, you don't have to do it. And next month, we're going to the TOI, so not that we're not meeting. I just think it would extend that time. So it's up to you if that's what you want to do. But thank you.
So can I get a motion for the discussion and approval of fiscal year 23 audit?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
And just had discussed.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, I thought we had already, never mind. I was ahead of myself there. Yeah, we already had a discussion.
Roll call then?
All right, trustee McNutt.
Yes.
Trustee King.
Aye.
Trustee Thurman.
Aye.
Trustee Bradley, you can give a thumbs up if you want to. All right, and Supervisor Hess.
Yes.
5 ayes and 0 nays, the motion passes.
Next is discussion of community needs assessment, NIU Center for Governmental Studies. I didn't put this on there as an action item because per your suggestion that I reach out to some other townships. I have second thoughts about maybe if this is the best route to go. I have reached out to a couple townships. Only one has called me back, but they have a population of 100,000 and less than 1% responded to the survey. Yeah, And, she, told me that if she were to do it again, she, would not have it as an online survey, just a written survey.
What township was that in?
It starts with an L.
Lyle? Cause I'm.
There's no
I know.
Lions.
Oh,
That's more than 100,000.
No.
Lions.
I don't remember off the top of my hand, but it's written down in my office. And so anyway, and then she expressed that residents don't know what they don't know. And so if they don't know what townships could do, then, if you only have, you'd have to be very strategic in your questions to gain some valuable information. So anyway, I reached out to the sociology department at NIU because I know a lot of times students will do those types of projects. And they in turn reached out to NGold. So they're having some conversations about if there's maybe a way that this could be a student-led project for community engagement class and I forget what the other class is. So I just wanted to take some time to collect some more information before we rush into making a decision. Since that was, I think, 15,000, we're not going to get the return that's going to help us, make decisions going forward. Then I don't think it's a good use of our money.
And I think they said they have a higher. So the township that you talked to, they use the NIU Center for Government Studies and only had 1%. And I think in the meeting she said that it was a lot higher than that. I guarantee you she didn't say 1% was their return rate. And so that makes.
Well, she said they're currently working with this township.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so, but they are currently working with this township. They did the community needs assessment. This township contracted with them to do their whole strategic plan. So.
Oof.
I don't know how reliable that is. Right, I would be more comfortable if we did something like Survey Monkey, where, I just don't know how reliable Facebook is for.
The other issue is you might end up with people out of jurisdiction answering questions for.
And they'll be different.
I mean, at 1%, you can do a mailer yourself, right?
Maybe that's, what this NIU group does.
Hey, 1%.
200 mailers, in the 6 square miles is not a big expense compared to 15,000.
Yeah, there was under 900.
For out of
Participate.
100,000 people, that's not a good representation of what you're looking for.
No. So, I really like the idea of focus groups. I think that, you can have some dialogue then. So I'm gonna wait and hear back what sociology and NGold has to propose and then I'll report back on that.
We did focus groups with the mental health survey. And it went well. I mean, we got people to come and they spoke and ate and.
And that was through CGS.
Yeah, but my concern about that is
Center for Government.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my concern about that is that when you do stuff like that, the people who are motivated to participate in those groups, they're not usually the average population. The average population is the 1% that 99% who won't respond, even with the focus groups. And that's what I was hoping we can get through. And so.
Right. Plus United Way has done one, Opportunity DeKalb has done one. So if they're willing to share their information, that may be valuable to us that, we can build upon what people are already saying.
Well, you're somewhat already doing it by all the things you're attending now.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So that's gotta give you some direction.
Right, like this meeting on the healthcare for DeKalb Township. I mean, there is a pressing need that's being presented on services that are lacking, that residents are constantly calling 911 for non-emergency things. Is there a way that we can fill that void, which, takes a burden off our emergency responders and
Speed up the
Yeah.
process of that emergency.
Can 911 automatically transfer them to
Mm.
311 or whatever
I
it is?
What I was told is that when, this is what was told by the fire department, is that when they receive a 911 call, they have to respond. Because-
Yeah. No, I get that. I was just wondering. It still wouldn't change the amount of time, but it might just,
They're telling people about other resources in the community when they go on those calls, though.
What did they say when they were here with the, every 3 minutes, there's a. 911 call
Is
every
is
3
that
minutes?
in DeKalb?
It's crazy.
Everything.
it's a lot going on in DeKalb. I wonder, and Chad, you may be, how does 911 distinguish between NIU and DeKalb? Is there a way that happens?
I don't think they get 911 over there anymore. I don't
Oh,
think they're a PSEC for 911 anymore.
oh,
I think it's DeKalb and then DeKalb County Sheriff's Department are the only two in the county.
bless you. Do they?
Geography or if all the lines are busy at one, it'll roll over and ring to the next one. But if they're all busy, it'll roll and ring to another one. You know, different police department or sheriff's department.
So I will report back when I have more information about that. And then next, discussion of DeKalb Township and Road District Personnel Policy and Procedures. We don't have anything to present to vote on, just wanted to provide an update that. So all of the departments are impacted by a new law that goes into effect
It's like,
called the Paid Leave for All Workers Act. It goes into effect January 1, 2024, where any employee in private or public or employer in private or public setting must provide paid leave to employees. It accrues at 1 hour for every 40 hours worked, up to 40 hours. So, and essentially, it's like the same as personnel days. They don't have to provide advance notice. They don't have to request it off. Everyone's guaranteed if, you know.
can't deny it, you can, pretty much,
Right.
they're not there, they can just use this, you know. They
So,
don't have to tell you what it's for.
Right.
Any of that kind of thing.
so they could, you know, just.
Failed.
Right. And then we already have our personnel policies, so we've had a couple of meetings with the attorneys about how do we marry those two things together so that, you know, we're complying with the law, but, you know, we're not providing just an extra 5 personal days. And so what is included with that loose paper with the red writing on it is the current draft. But that just came to us from the attorneys this week, so we haven't had a chance to review. But we thought we'd share it with you so that you can review, and we would like to bring this to a vote next month. So if you want to review it, if you have any.
Realistically, have to have it in place prior to the first of the year.
Yes. And we have to have time to explain it to the employees, so that's why we're hoping to do it at the November meeting. So when you have a chance to review it, you can reach out to any of the 3 of us if you have any comments, questions.
I have a question now. So if Craig was saying, I mean, people could just bail and not be there. What is the policy now? I don't know it by heart. Maybe it's here. I just.
Oh, yeah, I mean, you have to give us notice. Yeah, and then a lot of that's, I mean, you have to notify us of your vacation and, you know, I know for the road district. It's like, you know, yeah, and here it's 2 weeks. I kind of have a verbal agreement that more than that would be a lot better. And that winter time is almost off limits. I can't stop them from doing it, but they
Yeah,
gotta know
yeah.
that. You know, this is just. You want my real opinion? I think you might want to turn that camera
Oh,
off.
okay. Never mind.
But it is what it is, and we have to follow state law, and And it falls under any part-time person that works here, it falls for summer helpers. Any employee whatsoever.
So, I mean, I will get later, but so 1 hour for every 40 hours, is there a limit to that? So if you work for,
No, it only has to be up to 40 hours
Yeah.
earned.
okay.
So 1 week of earned, basically.
It accrues at 1 hour for every 40 hours worked, up to 40 hours total.
Okay.
So
With all of us,
it's like a personal day.
yeah, all of us mostly, having or I do anyway, longer term employees. I think the way we've approached this for the longer term employees. Is that starting January 1, they get an extra 40 hours. But it's not extra, I said that wrong, I
Yes, you
apologize.
did.
We're trading that out for, we used to have two personal days in our
Yes.
policy, so we're eliminating those. And then a portion of whatever vacation they have in place at that time. Will fill in for those, so for me, it's only 4 days, so it's the 2 personal days. 2 vacation days of what they have now, we're not adding any more time on. Cause both my guys have been here to the point where they both have 3 weeks paid vacation now, and neither one of them uses it all. Even though I harp on them to take time off, but, I guess when their boss never leaves, I guess they don't ever leave either, so,
Would you add anything to that?
No, it's basically just an even swap.
Okay.
Just reclassifying 40
Yes.
hours.
Yes,
So
Mhm. Yep. And it doesn't, for new employees, they have to wait 90 days before this goes into effect.
Is there a problem with people? Obviously, your guys don't take off days. Is there a problem with people taking off days, just like, oh, by the way, I'm not coming in tomorrow? So it's not, when I perused it, scanned it, I thought about, like at the university, we have some. I don't know if they're new, but they're certainly different with regard to remote. And there are people that say, we used to have a inner office form so that we could prepare in the event that somebody wasn't gonna be there. And then we were told that you can't really have that, because that's not legal, right? You can't have an inner office form that's different than whatever the university is using. But we do, we've been together for a while, and pretty much people are considerate. So I would just hope for the best. I mean, I guess if you get a whole bunch of new employees that are like, hey, but
Well,
you
the whole
all.
state's gonna be down, every employer in the
Yeah,
state's
I
gonna be down.
literally, everything.
Oh, okay.
Like, I don't know, do you have any employees? If you wanted to hire someone, this is. Okay. This would apply to them.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, and I think about the people always in our office, probably at the university, that aren't salaried, because they probably make the least. And they probably have the most restrictions. And they're impacted more than salaried people are. And so this is, in my mind, this is the most you could give people that make minimum wage. Okay, take a day off, but you want them to also be hopefully loyal
Right.
employees that wouldn't like the day before the budget.
I agree to a certain extent that people need time off, but for places that have
to a certain extent.
well, no, like have a week off if you work for someone that won't give you any vacation time. But for us or any private entity that gives you time off, I don't,
Yeah.
to make it mandatory.
I think some employers are gonna suffer more consequences from this than
Than us, by a lot.
others. I mean, like, who's gonna
Service
show up
industry.
to the fast food place on Christmas Day,
Really,
New Year's Day?
Yeah, well, we asked people, we don't require it, we don't put it in writing that during the busy times, like we know orientation is a busy time. When we're teaching UNIV, we do ask staff to be conscientious of that.
Right.
And to take that into consideration so that when you're planning your vacation, if you can avoid that time, please be mindful, because you put a burden on the staff. And if everybody did it at the same time,
Yeah.
it wouldn't happen. So I'm wondering, Can
And
you,
all I can say from personal is that you have to commend Brad, the township attorney that brought this to our attention.
Mhm.
Because I know for a fact DeKalb schools haven't addressed this yet, and neither has the DeKalb County government.
And
So,
then, yeah, this affects union contract.
yes, I mean, it supersedes union contracts and everything, so.
So anyway, this is, both attorneys have worked on this draft, so we just need to take a chance to review it and then we can bring it back next month for a vote to, update the policy and procedure manual to be in compliance with the law. So,
can I just wanna make a comment. I know that we, well, certainly, I'll say you, Mary, certainly like to keep things moving. And I'm not here to drag it, but I do think that sometimes conversations and insight help to kind of color the picture for me. I can't speak for the other trustees, but I would imagine that that's the case for them. So I don't think that we're trying to, expand or extend the time. And I worked all day like most people, so I want to go home too. But so I that seems to be like, you're like, okay, let's move to the next thing. But I want to put that out there that I think sometimes conversation about certain things is important and helpful. So.
Okay.
All right.
anything else on the subject of this? So again, if you have any questions or comments about it, feel free to contact any of the three of us. Next, we have approval of minutes of the regular Board of Trustees meeting, September 13th, 2023. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes?
So
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Abstain? Okay, that passes. No executive session, other business, next regular meeting, November 8th, 2023 at 6 p.m. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn.
I will second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
I believe whatever I want.